Hello everyone and welcome to the ETSI cross-project panel discussion. I'm delighted to have with me 6 leads for various ETSI standards groups, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, as they are far better at introducing themselves, I'm sure, and their projects than I am. So we're looking forward to having a sparkling discussion today. Thank you for that, Dario. As Dario said earlier, when we had our pre-panel call, he said we must make sure that this discussion flows like sparkling wine, and I'm absolutely convinced that that's the kind of discussion we're going to have. So actually,
and then we can drink champagne.
Yes. And I believe this is going out at a suitable time of evening, so you'll all be able to have a glass of champagne while you're listening to us. So Dario Sabella, would you like to go first and talk about, introduce yourself and your project briefly, please?
Oh, thank you so much, Caroline. I'm so happy to be here with you as a moderator and with the other estimated panelists. Yes, here I'm on behalf of ETSI MAC. This is a standard group under ETSI. MAC is an acronym, MEC, standing for Multi-Access Edge Computing. Most of us will know from other presentations in this event. I will not go into detail about telling you everything about what we do. I'm representing a wide group, I would say. It's now about under 20 members among operators, technology vendors, IT players, and so on. Actually, we are very focused on edge computing. Putting really the standard on the edge computing, which is kind of work aligned as well with the NFV, so the virtualization framework, and also to some extent also related to the ZSM and other groups in ETSI. We are trying to solve, from our perspective, the problem for the application developer point of view at the edge. So solve existential questions for applications at the edge. And this is our focus. And today we'll try to discuss the common points of interest with the other groups and the other speakers. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Dario. And next we'll turn to you, Ranganai Chaparatsa, please.
Thank you, Caroline. It's a pleasure for me to meet you all. My understanding is just 2 minutes, right, for a brief intro, right?
Yes, please introduce yourself and your project involvement in ETSI.
Thank you so much. My name is Ranganai. I'm working in the area of network automation standards for network automation through what we call autonomic networking paradigm. I'm a consultant working for Capgemini Engineering, supporting many operators and vendors in this space of standards, and also network automation, real solutions, driving RFQs and the like, select and drive this space. And within ETSI, I'm representing the TC Int AFI, the autonomic fixed and mobile integrated networks, focusing on this paradigm of autonomics, closed loop automation, multi-layer autonomics. Within that space, we have a framework we have come up with, we have standardized, as being adopted in the industry. It's called the Ghana Framework Generic Autonomic Networking Architecture that guides on multi-layer autonomics, and not only multi-layer autonomics, but also multi-layer AI, artificial intelligence. AI brings a lot of value at different abstraction levels. When you look at the architecture of the network, from within the network going up into the management and control realm of the network. So now the question is that when we see this, the multi-layer aspects, benefits of AI at different levels, now we are also seeing the disaggregation coming as a driver for that, guided by this Ghana framework. And then the industry, the vendors, the operators, they are asking, how can we actually select certain best breed type of, let's say, AI algorithms and models to automate the network and place those algorithms at the specific different layers of the Ghana framework. So a marketplace is what is required. We are now working on the idea and answering the question of how the marketplace should be created as an ecosystem, bringing the benefits also to the operators, because they want to onboard AI models into their network. And also vendors, they want to procure best of breed AI algorithms, even from institutes, from researchers working on quantum computing, for example. So the question is, how can we create this marketplace, bring all the stakeholders to benefit from this kind of ecosystem on multi-layer AI and to procure models for AI? Then that goes into federated catalogs, and we are addressing that with the framework. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rangane. We don't want to give away too many of our discussion secrets at once. But
yeah, exactly.
I'm sure we'll get back
so much,
to topics. Next, Giulio Maggiore.
Yes, thanks so much. I'm glad to be here. Giulio Maggiore from Team Italy. I'm working in technology and operation department and dealing with vendor management. So in my company, so my role in ETSI is TCINT chairman. So TCINT is a core network and interoperability, and our goal is to join the traditional interoperability and conformance techniques with the new advanced autonomic AI topics in order to still keep high the quality and keeping the time to market. So that's all in a short words.
Thank you very much, Giulio. And next, please would you introduce yourself, Muslim El Khattab?
Yeah, thanks so much, Caroline. I'm Muslim from Vodafone, principal architect in Vodafone, and also quite active in ETSI, in technical committee INT, and also in AFI, which is Autonomic Future Internet. Primarily very much in line, like Giulio and Rangane, we're working from an operator perspective, from a CSP perspective, but also evolving together with other stakeholders in becoming more, let's say, disaggregated, software-based, more modular, more, let's say, compatible, dynamically combinable players in order to drive forward this trend of automation. So we are looking forward, including in this panel, but also on the long scale and the long haul, to become really, let's say, architecturally stable, evolving as the challenges are changing in the landscape of the ecosystem, and to endorse trends like AI and other aspects to become more compatible, to match more what customers are looking for and what the market is pushing on us. So that's in a quick pitch towards the market.
Thank you very much, Muslim. And next, Klaus Martini.
Thank you, Caroline, that you invited me to this panel. I'm really happy to be here. Yes, my name is Klaus Martini. I'm with Deutsche Telekom. For a while now, I spent most of my business life in the area of operation, and the last couple of years in the area of standardization in order to drive automation forward. It's a pleasure for me to share the group ZSM, Zero Touch Service Management in ETSI. We started 4 years ago with 17 founding members, and then we have more than 70 members which are contributing to the ISGs. And we do it jointly with a couple of other groups internally in ETSI. Dario mentioned the relationship to ZSM. I like to say it to NFV in ETSI, but also we are working together with a couple of other organizations outside, like CGP, Open, ORAN and ONAP, for example. But to make it short, I think it's a collaborated effort, a collaborated idea which we have to do to in order to achieve automation end to end. And we are not claiming that we only have the only knowledge to do that. I think that is a common approach and a common activity to achieve end-to-end automation. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Klaus. And last but by no means least, Dung Wang.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you for having me here. First, I apologize. I do not have the background of Layer123 because I'm using browser, not the tools. So today I'm representing ETSI NFV. NFV represents Network Function Virtualization. It was founded 9 years ago by the telecom network operators. And after 4 releases, and I think we made a survey to the telecom operator today. I think 95% of telecom operator has already has already deployed based on our specifications after we published more than 100 public specifications already. And I also heard that China Mobile has deployed like more than 100 million subscribers based on our specification. And so today we are facing next step what we're going to do. So we're happy to talk to you guys, share ETSI's bright future together here in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, as you can see, we have an enormous amount of brain power here, and we also have many very, very hot topics that you've all mentioned. So I'm looking forward to your discussion. And I think the first question I'd like to pose is, what trends are you seeing in terms of operator adoption of network automation, and what's the state of play today? And I think, Muslim, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Colin. I'd love to start here. So operators are currently, let's say, evolving in the area of automation from an ecosystem perspective push. It means that as the interactions change, they're having to adapt by outside pressure, but also intrinsically in a native way. So, for example, operators are increasingly internally, let's say, remodifying their architectures to become more open to smaller players, SMEs, and other, let's say, AI algorithm providers, ISVs. So they're opening up their architecture, being more modular, so that they can help other players dock in, and they could, let's say, get best in breed algorithm providers, software providers, the softwareization thing. And also, operators are also natively, let's say, consolidating their OSS architectures, their BSS architectures, and they are streamlining their planes and working in a multi-layer way. And of course, one of the key instruments we use within ETSI and us as operators participating in the groups that we work in, we're using control loops in a nested hierarchical way. We're distributing intelligence from a top-down way into the different, let's say, nodes in the network. And we are in this way coordinating and modeling the behavior of networks. So automation, the key here is to model the workflow of any use case you want to run. To model this workflow, we use microservices, and we use its techniques that enable all of this. So that's why you hear things like slicing, microservices. So it's all about building the workflow, which is your business scenario. I mean, we are all business driven, customer driven. So the business scenario dictates the behavior of your use case, and that behavior is reflected in the workflow. And to be able to support dynamic workflows, there are many things that are transforming operators, digital transformation, in order to be able to reflect those workflows and to run them and give them back to the customers. So there's a lot of transformation inside intrinsic, things becoming more native, consolidated, modular, and open up as interfaces at reference points from operator perspective in the ecosystem to other players which are coming in, including the disruptive smaller players, the open source players, the algorithm providers, etc. So this is basically on a high level what's going on here.
Right, and Ranganai, is every operator that advanced in doing that kind of network automation, do you think, or what's the current situation?
The current situation, as I discussed also with my colleagues, also with my colleagues in Orange and also Vodafone, I support Vodafone very heavily, and also in TNT and Verizon, many of these operators. The journey for automation is unique to every operator. This is what we have realized. It means that each operator is having its own journey because of legacy, right? And also the pace at which to introduce technologies in the data center, for example. And I was so very excited to see how the Vodafone advanced a lot of automation within the data center when it comes to the autonomics, right? So the multi-layer autonomics, pushing that kind of automation, as Muslim said, in the data center. But in the telco space, we have seen that coming from the RAN, there's a lot of automation, and some operators are really doing a lot of automation on the RAN side, thanks to SON, self-organizing networks, even as hybrid SON, CSON, DSON type of automation. And coming to O-RAN, putting then the replication of the evolution of SON for 5G as well. So that's what we can say in a nutshell. The journey is unique to every operator, what we have seen as consultants supporting. And but there is really a lot of progress, especially when it comes to workflow, as Muslim mentioned. There's a certain two types of automation. There's what we call automated management, where management itself, the workflows were not automated, and we are moving into DevOps, IOOps, and the like. So that space itself has certain type of control loops. Sometimes it doesn't even need control loops at all. But when you come to the closed loop aspects, now you are building in network intelligence that is closed loop and intrinsically has to be closed loop. So this is the autonomics and automated management. These are the two paradigms that are very important we are monitoring in the operator space in terms of automation.
Interesting. And Dung, do you see more automation happening in the NFV domain now? Because there was a time when all those VNS were managed quite manually, but how's automation really permeating your domain now?
Yes, so for the MV, we are mostly telecom cloud today, right? So we are really rely on the telecom cloud, how automation could happen. Recently, we heard an announcement from the China Mobile. They are claiming they are hopefully to achieve the layer 4 network automation by 2025. I think today they are. It looks like they're mostly layer 2 and layer 3 network automation. So still some gaps between the automations. So I think TM Forum and they made a categorization of the 5 layers, and but the final achievement, I think we are hoping get a zero touch and zero interruption, and so those kind of things will truly happen. From the ETSI MV, we are doing something, for example, as a policy-driven, and also China Mobile proposed like intent-based some automation as well. So we are hoping work with them to achieve 2025 layer 4 automation target.
Great. Okay. And Klaus, what trends are you seeing from your perspective?
Well, I see a trend that operators recognize that automation is a key topic to be installed in the future, because what Muslim and Ranganai said is completely true. They have a lot of tools which are doing in DT and a lot of process changes based on the automation topic. And I think the trend is there that we are using AI, for example. We are talking about closed loop and this kind of stuff. And all of that has an impact on the process side, on the organization side themselves. And talking about disaggregation, for example, I think the need of automation is really a given topic there, because if we disaggregating the technology, means we are split in different boxes, and the automation topic is much more important than before. Because if you buy a technology from a vendor, a node B or something like that, then the vendor will do the integration stuff for doing. Now we have to do it by own, or an integrator has to do that. And if we not automate these topics, integration, configuration management, all of that, I think that it will come to a nightmare situation from operator point of view. So that is recognized in DT, and we have a couple of projects which are dealing with the topic of automation, because it's a key issue for us in DT to solve the topic of automation.
Okay, and Giulio, what's your perspective on this?
Well, let's say, of course, the position is common. Automation is absolutely needed in the operators, because we need to speed up and to make sure that all the procedures will go in place. But that's why you need all the interoperability within the components, so has to be, let's say, tested even more and more from the end-to-end point of view. And there's more, let's say, to say, oh, I have my piece and I can put it together with the other one. That's why it's important to say, okay, and once I created the infrastructure, the service goes to get as well as before or not. So in practice, we are doing something which is just the opening the door of the new street, a new way. So I believe absolutely. So this is a very, very important, and that's why we are continuing merging the experience to the new reality.
Great, yes. And Dario, I mean, Edge, there's going to be even more distribution with Edge. So, how important is automation there, and what are the trends? Are operators thinking about automation right from the start as they're thinking about Edge, or is it still sort of something seen as separate?
So thanks for the question, Caroline. This is giving me the opportunity to clarify maybe the scope of Edge Computing MAC and the group that you are following there. So yes, the network automation actually is a huge thing, right? So groups like GSM are taking the overall approach, and then NFV and OSM managing the telco clouds, right? Actually, what we do in MAC is managing the edge telco cloud. It's a subset of the activities there, right? So, of course, the work is in alignment with the other bodies, but really we see just a portion of that. So I see two kind of dimensions. One is that, of course, we are talking about standardizing the edge cloud, no? And then I see an increasing number of workloads at the edge. So Edge can enable AI in many flavors. There can be any kind of algorithms, not only for the automation of the network itself, but also a workload that can improve the services. And then digital twins and any kind of AI vision or sensor robotics and everything else. Also exploiting the predictions coming from measurements. For predictive edge analytics is something that I see very important, for example, in the future for Mac, for example, for the automotive domain. We are collaborating with 5G 5G Automotive Association, and I see here, for example, predicted QoS information is something that is an information coming that can be exploited at the edge, okay? But of course, standardizing for the network automation is something that maybe for the Mac is just tailored to the aspects that are needed to manage the edge telco cloud. So lifecycle management of edge application is not the overall story, it's just a portion. And then because then there are other groups taking the lead on that. So I see an increasing need of network automation. And still the Mac work is still limited in that perspective, but I see an increasing interest in that direction in the future.
Interesting. Now, a couple of you, or several of you actually, have mentioned this term disaggregation and talked about, you know, the impact of disaggregation on automation. Dung, I think that kind of disaggregation really has been there all the while in terms of of the telco cloud, but I just wonder what impact you think that is having in terms of creating a vendor ecosystem that is working together end to end on automation, because of course these workflows have to go across vendors, across domains, and perhaps there's been more experience of that in the telco cloud area than anywhere else at the moment. So I think you're on mute.
Yes,
Dung. Sorry, Dung, are you on? Can you hear me? Dung?
Are you, Caroline? Are you asking me
Yes,
about
yes,
telecom? Oh, sorry. So yes. So telecom cloud is definitely needs the end-to-end automation, especially. I mean, there are many open source under the end-to-end orchestration, right? So when we're talking about the disaggregation, we can see some of the underlying open source. They are trying to go to the telecom cloud because they are originally designed only for the resource, not for the telecom services. End-to-end resource, when they do orchestration, is totally different from the public cloud resource orchestrations. So the tools has been used in the open source in the public cloud is totally disaggregate with what telecom cloud is doing here. So we appreciate they are encouraging. I mean, they are trying to move to our field, but to be honest, today we still see the value because the ETSI has better understanding of the telecom cloud. We understand end-to-end service, how to do the network automation, but for the public cloud, they are more like a generic. They want to do the not just for telecom, they want to cover every field. But for that solution, might not understand our services. So we are hoping when we do such network automation, those tools under our orchestration have to be standardized interface with our ETSI solution. For example, when we do containerized solution, we see, for example, even in Edge, like a Mac and Daria talking about, and also when we in the core side. So we need such kind of interfaces with a container solution to standardize in order to be used in our telecom cloud side. I hope I give some answer to you back, Caroline.
Thank you very much. Well, I mean, I could see that Dario was nodding there about the need for an ecosystem that can work together, you know, across and build cross end-to-end automation. Is this something that you are actually seeing Dario, or is this something that needs to be further developed? And you're on mute.
Kind of. Yeah, kind of. I think it's a work in progress, right? So to be fully honest, I see of course an interest, and this is healthy because it's needed by the ecosystem. And like in the past, you remember when there was this kind of big disruption given by NFV, the virtualization of everything, the coupling the software from the hardware was changing everything. Now we are moving a step forward, right? So for the network automation, I see this is a long journey, honestly. It's not something that we can pretend to close in 6 months, right? But there are also some aspects we have to consider. And thanks for the question. I believe this is, for example, the question you asked before about disaggregation. This is, of course, as Dung said, is implying a problem about defining proper interfaces, right? And then the standard is playing a role. Then we have to be also very careful of what is the extent to standardize everything, or just what is needed to allow interoperability among the stakeholders, right? Because I believe this is a general concept that all us as a standard guys, let's say, have in mind. We don't want to close the market. We actually put in place a standard which is at opening the market, and then we have to follow which is the implementation and the guidance from the industry to specify only those interfaces which are required for the interoperability. And that's the tricky part, because in the domain of the network automation there is also concurrent work practically done by companies and not always let's say necessarily following the standard, right? So it's a kind of like chasing a moving target, right? So and then I believe there is an interest in using the standard as a tool that can help interoperability in that perspective, but of course it's something that usually it takes time, I believe, and the alignment among us, at least as a standard body, is a great starting point, in my opinion. Maybe I just anticipating some challenges, but also other challenges can be also adding other stakeholders like open source and other organizations, and should be on the table.
Well, I'm going to ask you about challenges in a minute, but I'm going to turn to Giulio and sort of say, Dario made some very good points about interoperability. I saw you nodding your head there. Again, what standards are really important, for an ecosystem?
Well, let's say before say which standard, because of course every standard touch a very important part of the chain. I believe it's changed completely the way we write the standards, because the actor, the ecosystem is really various. We don't forget the open source and all the others. So Dario was mentioned, we develop some interfaces, which are maybe the key point. But then you have to really test, you have to prove. So that's why it's not anymore, let's say, the waterfall approach that we had in the past. I write the specification first, and the implementation, and I go live. It's a continuous. So with the AFI, we have seen the value of the proof of concept. So I see something, I test, I give back feedback to maybe to the who wrote the base standard, and say, look, this is good, this is not. So I believe it's completely changed the way we work, and that's why it's important to establish a continuous collaboration, a continuous in an open way, in order to say write a better standard and having a better product.
Yeah, indeed. And Muslim, what's your view of this?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Caroline. Very much in line with what the previous esteemed speaker said, but also the issue of disaggregation is very important from this following perspective. So we mostly present CSPs, communication service providers, and the old known CSP-centric ecosystem centered around the CSP is also evolving. As CSPs evolve from what we call digital telco to a digital tech company, we become more IT-based, software-based. We become more, let's say, active on higher layers with the modular structure, with more intelligence, which is, of course, automation and autonomics in the background. So with this evolution that we're going through, the whole ecosystem also evolves. And what happens here is, for disaggregation, we're able to disconnect from one single vendor which tried to lock us in the past, and to open the floor for many small ISVs which provide excellent algorithms which could be even open source to do specific AI, let's say, functionality. Or we are able to open the floor to more than one player for different segments, like the edge cloud, the RAN. So we're able to, first of all, migrate things into the cloud. We're able to open the floor for benevolent competition among players and include SMEs and diversify the market of different, let's say, participants, which docked into the CSP. At the same time, of course, people talk a lot overhead that about this cloud native thing. Cloud native, which actually means that you see within one step or one hop of reach all the assets of your and of third parties. So everything is aligned and reachable within one hop. That's the cloud native thing. That is actually the step which is the key for digital transformation what telcos are going through. So disaggregation here is one of the trends and very well connected with the overall trend that we're seeing here.
Thank you. And Klaus, does this the ecosystem associated with disaggregation, is this something that's of concern to you?
Yeah, definitely it concerns me, because if you are going the area of disaggregation, then we have to create a new ecosystem. What concerns me more is what is our definition of this ecosystem? Who is part of the ecosystem? Who will deliver which role will play which organization in this ecosystem? Which role can play standardization? Of course, standardization will play a huge role in the ecosystem, the new ecosystem, like open source as well. But I think we have at least to understand what is the definition of that ecosystem, because we're talking in principle about the ecosystem, but don't have no clue how the ecosystem maybe could be look like. And if you're not synchronizing our thinking about this ecosystem, I'm afraid, to be honest, that by the end of the day, we have different views about ecosystem, we achieve nothing. That is a bit my concern if you're talking about ecosystem in terms of disaggregation or in principle. And I would be more happy if we have a clear understanding about this ecosystem. For sure, also this regulator has also to play a role in the ecosystem, and to compose the different roles, to orchestrate the roles. I think that is missing for the time being, because each organization talking about ecosystem, like we do it here in ETSI, and I think we have more or less a common view in ETSI about the ecosystem. But if you're going outside, then you have the impression they have different views about the ecosystem. And as I said, if you talk to the regulator, I assume he has a complete different understanding which role he can play in the ecosystem. By nature, that is the case. And that is something I think we have to synchronize, not only the technology in order to achieve automation. We have also discussed more in detail, maybe controversially, what is how the new ecosystem maybe could look like. That is my understanding about the ecosystem, which concerns me definitely.
Okay, and Rangan, I think you've got some views on. Have you got some views on what the system is?
Yes. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, everyone. I think we are all seeing quite a very interesting common points regarding the subject of disaggregation. The thing that we are forgetting is that disaggregation is a multifaceted aspect. We have seen it in NFV, decoupling of software from hardware. The reason being that the motivation is that allow the two to evolve independently. Software and hardware can evolve independently, right? SDN came, disaggregation control plane, strip control plane out of the infrastructure. Again, what does it enable? Programmability. And that is benefiting the operators, that they can have a central brain to program the network. That was the incentive. I like what NGMN and ETSI started working on the fact that when you look at the networks themselves, hierarchically, there is also disaggregation. In the past, when you look at a RAN provider, for example, he was providing infrastructure and also providing the management and orchestration layer on top of it, or the management and control on top of it. Now, as Muslim said, ISVs can play a very important role to be suppliers of the platforms to manage the network, not the infrastructure. So we can decouple the infrastructure supplier from the management and control supplier itself. So again, that's a disaggregation that is happening as we see it. We say that ecosystem is not there. No, the ecosystem is there. The point is that it's about sharing information. It's about producing even blueprint of white papers that prescribe what is exactly the ecosystem, who are the stakeholders in this picture. I like what Klaus said earlier, is that for operators, if you look at operators, then we are seeing the SI, the system integrator, is playing a very important role. We didn't have this role in the past because everything was closed and the vendor was doing that. And I also like the fact that the vendors like Huawei, for example, they are moving more in the direction of software. They are also seeing themselves as software suppliers. And thanks to this, let's say, disruption that we are looking at, that means disaggregation is really something that is taking place. And standards for that, what we saw in research was that standards kill innovation. What we have learned in ETSI is that what we need to standardize are containers where the algorithm should sit, and not to standardize algorithms. A lot of people make a lot of mistakes to talk about standardizing algorithms. Then you kill innovation. And the frameworks we are working in ETSI and also in the NGM and so-called knowledge plane platforms is to make sure that modules for automation, these are algorithms. They provide for vendor differentiation. They can't be standardized. Not every algorithm. Yes, there are some algorithms we can standardize, but the big picture is what we are now seeing, and we should compare maybe, as Klaus said, maybe the picture is to compare maybe even a framework as a paper to show the world what is the nature of the ecosystem, who are the stakeholders. We see ISVs, as Muslim mentioned. We see SIs as well. We see knowledge plane suppliers. We are moving in the era we call knowledge plane driven networking in ETSI, thanks to this ETSI Ghana framework, which is painting that picture also in NGMN adoption in ITU. So thanks. That's what I wanted to share, the big picture on the supply chain changes as well as the innovation, not to kill, and we have the disaggregation happening.
That's the very important points, Rangane. I think that they're very, very interesting indeed. And I think then you've all sort of pointed out some of the challenges here, and I just be interested in your views of what needs to be done in order to overcome some of those challenges. Making the market understand better what's needed, and also how to adoption, what roles you can all play in doing that. And I'd like to turn first actually to Muslim, because Vodafone's made a very big play recently about how it's making that transformation from being an operator really to a tech company, and made some very bold statements. So you're right in the thick of it. I'm very sure, Muslim, in terms of that, and you must see that there are challenges involved there. And from that perspective, is ETSI doing the right things? Are you moving fast enough? What more needs to be done in order to really sort of push this forward, come to the kind of view that Rangane and Klaus were talking about in terms of defining an ecosystem and so on?
Thanks very much, Caroline, for this great question. It's a pleasure to answer. And indeed, where there are great goals, there are also big challenges coming along. And I can surely say that as any large operator, including such a large operator with a footprint like Vodafone, the likes of us, as you evolve, you have to evolve from a digital telco to a digital techco, to be more IT oriented and less of a big pipe or a transport company, because that's where the value is shifting. So for this trend, of course, we face challenges. Some of them are, for example, the issue of upskilling. It means that how do you really enhance the skills within your company before you even talk about partners in the ecosystem, which is evolving inside the company? How do you upskill people to really think in a more modular way, develop more, let's say, programmable or programmed software modules, which will feed in this whole skeleton of the architecture. You have an architectural model as you evolve, which is digital, but you need to feed it in with modules, with software. So upskilling is one key. Second thing is that, for example, as a large operator, you have to consolidate. You have a huge jungle of different OSS systems. Vodafone has 700 systems which compose our OSS, operation support system. So this jungle, how do you harmonize that? Harmonization, consolidation, simplifying the landscape to make it more IT upgradable. The same goes for BSS, but that's less of a pain. So consolidation, harmonization to make things modular, and then to have this, let's say, container structure that Rangane also mentioned. These are things that are really hard to do, because you have, let's say, currently live systems all attached to paying customers in the business and the consumer area. Things are running. How do you, without, let's say, cutting your operator lifeline, upgrade gradually as you go along to that stage? And you have not enough time, so there's also speed. So those challenges are really big. And I would say that, first of all, kudos and heads up to ETSI. We are really having at ETSI an excellent platform where we really can interact in a very, let's say, friendly and professional environment between vendors, operators, ISVs. We're currently or constantly feeding in the ecosystem, or let's say the consortium, which, I mean, let's say a consortium in ETSI, in a group or in an activity or a POC, proof of concept, like Julie mentioned, which we run constantly. This is a small mock-up of a real ecosystem in the outside world. So when we do a proof of concept or we join efforts in a group, we reflect the ecosystem in the outside world where you make business and make money. So with these, let's say, mini or skimmed ecosystem, we learn how to interact between vendors and operators, how to split. So this is the challenge which ETSI allows us to resolve. How to split the load between the vendor and the operator. How do you allow an ecosystem to accommodate, besides the real incumbent vendor, other smaller players, and how to align all of us there? How to split the revenue and the workload or the load of work. So all this balanced approach we learn by, let's say, practicing. It's a stage. ETSI is a stage where we are able to innovatively think, but still interact already as a pre-stage for the real outside world. And from this, when we abstract the work into a model, this is then the blueprint behind the standards we're producing. So that's why ETSI is really one of the leading SDOs, and we really are grateful. It's an important part of what's really getting out there. So this is, let's say, my semi-brief answer to this question.
Sure. Well, thank you for that. And Dario, I mean, MEC is more of a sort of greenfield environment, so presumably your challenges are a bit different.
Yeah, I think so. At least partially still not, let's say, defining the world framework for network automation, but still for we are facing a lot of let's say challenges in terms of defining the standards for the edge computing. Now I see, for example, something that also in the future scope of the working MEC will have an impact in the future. We are working now, for example, in the MEC Federation. MEC Federation is something that is something that it's a concept that it was not present like years ago, and now the stakeholders want to collaborate together in a federation in different edge clouds, and this is adding another challenge for the edge computing, also including possibly in the future as well network automation and all the stuff. So now we are putting in place a standard to collaborate, to intercommunicate a different MEC system and MEC to cloud as well, right? And there are a lot of challenges how to make interoperable this communication information, and also security concern, how to preserve the need to collaborate between different domains by preserving privacy and separation of concerns, right? So actually, these are challenges that soon, I believe, will also touch as well the topic of network automation and security and privacy, how to manage data, how to transfer data, but also to how to allow, for example, edge resource sharing between different operators, and also the operators themselves they can have a collaboration with other hyperscalers. As we said before, some of them can have their own infrastructure, they can have their own management orchestration partners that are helping them to manage the infrastructure. So there are very heterogeneous situations in each and every cloud domain, and this is the challenge that we are facing now in MEC, supporting the requirements, for example, from the GSMA OPG, Operator Platform Group. It's an organization with many leading operators across the globe and technology providers. And the aim is really, for example, to define this kind of MEC federation. And ETSI, also in collaboration, I will say, with 3GPP, we are putting in place standards in that perspective. This is another challenge that I can mention from our point of view, and maybe in the future will have an impact as well, the work that we have also to upgrade, enhance in the way of offering some automation as well in the federation.
Mm. So Rangane, can I just ask you specifically about AI and automation? Because a lot of operators are trying. Obviously, they can see the value of applying AI, but that's an enormous challenge, isn't it? I mean, how can you mitigate that kind of challenge, Rangane?
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Dario. Thank you, pleasure, my honor. Yeah, thank you, Caroline. It's a very good question what you have asked when it comes to AI, in terms of adoption, as well as what challenges do we have with AI today. ETSI started very good work on the question of looking at the deployment of AI. There are certain aspects that have to do with ethics, then quality that has to do with the actual technical aspects like quality, reliability, and the like. That drives towards the aspect of certification, right? And now the question is that we've been hearing so many people talking about certification. Is it doable? There are some people claiming doing some certification. The European Commission has come up with a very clear framework to drive certification of AI systems and AI models. That brought together ETSI, TC Int, and MTS to respond to that and answer the question of, do we need AI in test systems themselves? Because the problem we are having with operators and even the automation is that the systems are complex. They embed AI. Now, the traditional test systems that we are used for conformance and interoperability testing, they don't apply to testing systems that are inherently very intelligent in making their decisions by AI. So we need some kind of test systems that we are calling autonomic test systems that are operating on autonomic principles to mimic the behavior of intelligent systems to build trust and confidence. Like we are discussing with operators, I was very glad with the Vodafone and Orange and China Mobile. We came together and discussed about building trust and confidence in autonomous networks. And one of the instruments is test systems that are intelligent to bring about certification. Then certification foundation is about metrics. And ETSI, Int, AFI, and MTS, they are defining metrics that will form a foundation for certification. For example, the speed of learning of an AI algorithm. How does it converge very fast? If it consumes a lot of power, then we don't need such an AI in the network, because it consumes a lot of power. So we need metrics on the basis of which to do certification, and MTS and the AFI and INT, they are now working on standards to define this kind of metrics. That's what I believe will help the operators in terms of the foundation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ranganai. So Klaus, to you, what are the challenges from your perspective, and how can they be overcome?
I think Ranganai mentioned a couple of them, the challenges which I see as well. But in addition to that, I think the discussion is too fragmented for the time being. That means we are not have a joint approach and joint idea. In the beginning, I said, okay, but there should be a certain point in time where we're discussing more jointly together what are the benefits and what is the future of us. I think that is something what we should definitely do, that we have to overcome, that we have a much better clear view how is doing what in the discussion, in this ecosystem discussion, and also based on the technology, which STO is important from the mob operator point of view to contribute to the automation topics themselves. Because if you look around, we have a lot of different organizations which are dealing with automation topics in different directions with different ideas. And that is from a map operator point of view is a very hard stuff to manage, because resources are limited, the money is limited. And if we are continuing as we do it here, I think it will take time to drive this topic in automation, what is definitely needed from operator point of view. I think all the topics mentioned before are valid and useful, but we have to orchestrate all the things that by the end of the day we have a common view. What does it mean if you talk about automation and how we can achieve that? AI is one promising technology which you can use for sure. So we have to test if the promise is there or not, because I'm so long in the business, and if I would follow all the ideas which were promising, and by the end of the day you put it in the bin, let me say, I think we have really to find out what are the benefits of each these ideas. I think AI could be a good tool, a good idea to automate networks. Also, intent-based management, which we're also dealing in a couple of organizations, also in ETSI, I think is also a promising idea. But we have to spend more effort to analyze what are the benefits and how we can use that. I think a lot of things flying around, and we have to bring it together. It reminds me on a kind of a puzzle. I don't know if the pieces of the puzzle fits together, and I think that is something what we have to do now.
Okay. So, Doug, do you feel like you've got any puzzle pieces to fit in terms of the automation that you're looking at?
So I think the barriers for the ETSI envy are similar. I mean, previous speakers, they are facing similar questions. But for us, we are a little bit different because we already had a large scale deployment. I mean, people think most of our job has been finished and very success. So they are looking future by the different thinking. But to be, for example, when they move to the future of the container-based solution, they are thinking maybe they are not waiting for the standard. But we see some of the barrier challenge today. For example, the Kubernetes is different from the OpenStack. I mean, because OpenStack is widely deployed because of the ETSI MAC. I mean, there are 4.5G and 5G. Most deployment is based on the OpenStack. But when we talk about Kubernetes, we found that huge difference. Then because the OpenStack is a holistic solutions, they include everything, neutral, everything there. But for Kubernetes, it's a big community. It's really hard for you to integrate with Kubernetes together with a collection of the different projects, and they have their own versions. So in that case, we think that defining standard is very important in order to interoperability with the Kubernetes. Today, we have no-response interface from Kubernetes. For example, we have the IFA 40, and also we have IFA 36 about the southbound multi-cluster management standard interfaces. So those standards is very important to overcome to those barriers because they are very diversified. It's really hard to integrate with the deployment. For that reason, I think ETSI MAC will play a critical role when we're talking about the future evolution of the containerization and open source solutions. Caroline, yes.
Thank you very much, Dung. And Giulio, so what are your thoughts on the challenges here?
Well, let's say just connecting to what Dario was saying before about AI. AI is one of the components that will be always part of our networks, and that's why it will be much more important, say, to have a testing approach which is adaptive, because we are not going to test so that as Ranganai said, the algorithm, because that is the invention, that is the patent from the various supplier, but the exchange from the system with the external elements, and we say it's not anymore like in the past we have a static environment, but is adaptive. So that is the real challenge, and of course all the elements change. There is an integration problems, and it's very important to test and to have proof of concept as soon as possible in order to address the right need for standardization, because we don't have to really make the mistake to over standardize because it's not good for the market, or to leave too many options because it's not good for the implementations.
Indeed. Well, our hour is almost up. I can't believe it, because this has been this really has been a sparkling discussion, and you've all given some absolutely fantastic insights. So thank you all very much indeed for all those insights. There's a few seconds left, and I'm going to go have a lightning round to all of you now to say, a little bit about, what is the future of what you're doing and your interaction with other standards bodies and open source. Can you make it very short and sweet? And I'm going to go to Ranganai first to say, what needs to be done in terms of your cooperation beyond ETSI.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Caroline. Very briefly, we find something that has formed as a result of the need to work together as the SDOs, has been created under the TM Forum. It's called Multi-SDO Initiative. It's bringing all the SDOs together, but also very important, it's not just the SDOs. The mistakes of the past, we used to bring only basic engineers to work together in standards, but we were missing, the most important is the research community, which has very strong competence on these challenging technologies like quantum. And And what the TM Forum with this multi-SDO is doing is bringing ETSI, bringing 3GPP to work together, even with researchers that can contribute directly very good ideas, and then we work together within the multi-SDO. And I want to thank also everyone on this to contribute to that multi-SDO under the TM Forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Aganai. Klaus, very quickly,
Very quickly, you know, I believe, I am a strong believer in cooperation across the community, and that is what you definitely have to do. We have to enhance the cooperation with other SDOs, other open source boys, not to forget. And ETSI can play here an important role in order to bring the people together, because we're doing a great job in ETSI, and that is what should be also recognized externally. That's my short sentence for that one.
Thank you. Dung, very quickly. Any final thoughts?
You need to be mute. So I think the standard ETSI should go as far as possible for the interoperability, but leave the open source as a de facto standard as much as possible. Thank you.
Okay, great. Dario, you were nodding there.
Yeah, indeed, this was open source is the big elephant in the room. I was laughing all the time. It was mentioned many times. Very shortly, I believe we have to be fast and also very respectful of the work in the open source and in working implementation, and then be and welcome implementation oriented proposals and contributions that can bring into the standard, because actually otherwise it's something that let's say working in silos is not enough. Working in collaboration among the SDOs, but also not forgetting open source. This is really, I believe, one remark.
Okay, final word for Muslim. Sorry, Giulio, I'm going to go to Muslim. I don't know if we'll have time for you as well, but Muslim.
Thank you, Caroline. I'll be very, very brief. I see the future that we should collaborate in ETSI and in other SDOs as different ecosystem players, and we should try in every SDO to get the best in class. For example, architecture evolution, ODA in TM Forum, in ETSI, the autonomics. So, and then combining all of these, superimposing them, we'll have the big picture that we want to get. So this is very brief from my side.
Thank you. Very brief from you, Giulio. I think we just have time. Into.
Just coming to the picture that you said about the elephant in the room, full of crystal, I would say, and we need really to take care about that. And please, let's work together. I believe there is a lot to do, but cooperation it's one of the basic things for, say, the future. That's all.
Great.
It's important to keep the crystal good because we want to fill with the champagne, right,
exactly.
Caroline? As you said.
Very good wine, yes.
Let's have our sparkling wine now. Thank you, Dario. Well, thank you all very much for your amazing insights. I think you've been there's been a wonderful spirit of cooperation here today in this panel, and I hope I look forward to seeing great things from ETSI in the future. So thank you, Giulio. Thank you, Ranganai. Thank you, Dario. Thank you, Dung. Thank you, Klaus, and thank you, Muslim.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye.